I'm James. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and the host of Lifeology. And my guest today is Karith Foster, who's a humorist and critical thought leader whose main focus is on free expression, diversity, and inclusion. Welcome back to my show, Karith.
Thank you for having me, James.
Yes, my listeners may not know this, but Karith was a wonderful guest on my show earlier in the year. And so if you want to hear her story, her backstory, all that she's done, simply go to James Miller at lifeology.com and you can go in the radio directory and you will hear that awesome show called Breaking Down Stereotypes. So welcome back.
Thank you. And I'm so glad we're talking now because it's just such a critical time for this conversation to happen.
Usually I don't put timestamps or dates in my show, but I really want people to understand what's going on right now. So today is June 9th, 2020. Some of us are in a second or third stage when it comes to opening up again the country. So I'm down here in Florida and you are in Texas. But as we know, so many things are happening. What a time to live. Of course, we have the brutal murder of George Floyd and all of that's happened. And so I really want to have a conversation with you, talking between two friends, a person of color and a person that's not of color, just to be able to have a conversation that many people just don't know how to have. So you are, your platform is perfect for this. How are you doing with all this right now?
I have good days and I have bad days. Let's be honest. I am, a woman of color. I am an empath. I have two small children. There are times when I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the world that I brought them into?
Yeah.
Which I never thought would cross my mind. I question every day where we're heading as a country and as a world. I'm the eternal optimist, so I do hold hope that people will come, because I honest to goodness believe there are more good people than bad. I also believe the media plays its part in hyping things up, although there was nothing to be hyped up about watching a man murdered in cold blood on, in broad daylight. I hope to goodness that this wave of consciousness that we all now seem to be sharing collectively, and that wasn't always the case before. I hope that it's not just a wave, that it continues. We tend to have short memories. We tend to just kind of move on to the next thing as a culture. We also don't like to grieve or be uncomfortable. And this is a time to be uncomfortable. Because if we're not uncomfortable with this, then the same thing will keep happening again and again and again.
I read, I saw something on Facebook. I think it was in 1950. They around the 1950s, there was a march happening, and some African American women had the sign that said, talking to the police, "Stop killing us." And it was so interesting to see that, because you're like, fast forward to 2020, and that's still happening. Now, of course, this show is not about bashing police officers. It's simply about having a conversation about how can we as a world, just, I guess, create a place where everyone has the same rights, the human rights. I mean, I can't even say it. It's so,
right. No, but
you're
saying it exactly right. And listen, I understand the whole BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, and I support the intention.
Yes.
My concern, though, is that there will be a backlash from people who don't understand that. They're not saying like Black Lives Matter more. It's really like Black Lives Matter too. Like, please understand what we're. I gave an analogy recently where I talked about. Remember how? Well, not remember because we weren't there, but when Europeans first landed on the Americas, right? The Native Americans, the indigenous people, could not see the ships. They couldn't see the ships because it was so far out of their realm of consciousness and possibilities and perspective that they just couldn't see it. So it was almost like this magic trick. These people are like showing up on shore and they're like, how did this happen? And I kind of feel like that's how racism is right now for a lot of white people. Now they see the ships.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. What I was telling people as well is, you think about the All Lives Matter and then the Black Lives Matter. Think of it as if you're like an aerial shot. You're looking at the world, looking down on the world. And that's the All Lives Matter aspect. And then you zoom in, let's say to America, and that is what we're talking about specifically with the Black Lives Matter. So it's not one or the other. It's one is an umbrella, and then one is specifically the movement of saying, we matter too. We are going through all of this, and we really needs your support right now. So I really want people to understand that there is that difference when it comes to the perspective, but it's all the same thing at the end of the day when it comes to, yes, all lives matter, but because of the the prejudice and the racism that's happening, we're focusing specifically on Black Lives Matter.
Right.
I have
right.
a question just as simple as this. I grew up calling African Americans African Americans, but I hear some of these people say black. What is the quote term that you prefer?
I prefer Karith.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. In fact, I just did. I totally got called out. I appreciate that. Yes, that is a very, very good point. Yes.
American. I was sharing this. I studied abroad. I studied at Oxford University in England when I was much younger, and what I loved about it, what had made me even more enamored with the country was I was just Karith and I was American. I wasn't Black. I wasn't African American. Like I wasn't classified by my skin color.
Yeah.
And I get why, the great artists of our past, Eartha Kitt, Josephine Baker, Tina Turner, they went over to Europe because there was a freedom that came with just being able to be you without having to also be your skin color. And, I pray that we get to that place in America one day. I don't know if it's possible in our lifetimes, as optimistic as I am. And I get it. Listen, we like to label people. I saw you talking about that earlier, and I really appreciated that conversation, your Instagram video on that. And we do it because it's comfortable. Like, we like to know where we stand. That's what the ego does, right? Who are they? Who am I? Well, let me put a label on it so it just makes things a little bit easier for me to digest it, right? The problem is when you do that and you mislabel, what you are then doing is missing out on opportunities, relationships, and experiences.
And that is a really good point, because unfortunately there is a caste system or a label system, specifically here in the United States. I'm sure in other countries as well, but because what's happening now, people automatically assume, well, you are Black, you are white, you are Muslim, you're a Republican, you're Democrat, you're Christian, whatever that might be. And with that, we all of a sudden take this concept of this is what that means. If we're based on our own experience, and all of a sudden you must be this way because this is the label I've used, so therefore there's no ability for you to expand and to be who you truly are.
Exactly. And we're not all going to fit in the same box, and we're not going to all, portray the same ideology or it's and the paradigm. We are human beings. We're so incredibly, beautifully, wonderfully complex. And so it's such a shame to try to, just put us into one simple category. Yeah. Oh, well, you're Black, you can't be a conservative. Oh, well, you're gay, you can't be a Republican. Oh, you're white, you can't possibly be able to dance and rap music. It's so stupid. You know what I mean?
It is. I mean, I'm laughing because it's so silly. I mean, unfortunately, a culture was created, and even let me take a step back. A culture simply means how you, in my house. When my family, that is my culture. Your specific family is your culture. And then the culture gets bigger when you add more people to that. And that can be just people's ideology, the way they look at the world. And so when you have a cluster of people, that creates a culture. And so with that, unfortunately, some cultures have all of a sudden labored other cultures. And then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so pretty soon that's where you have the races. When it comes to African Americans, it comes to the Caucasians, it comes to the Latins. I mean, there's all these different aspects, and all of a sudden I think even the bigger the culture gets, as far as the people, then all of a sudden the attributes decrease. And so it goes from I'm an individual to more people there, and all of a sudden I can only be four things. I can be a white man, I can be, for me, I'm a talker, I go to the gym, whatever it may be, but it's so minimal. Right. And so you really, really lose that individuality when it comes to the bigger a culture gets.
I think you really hit on something great, and that is, the bigger the culture gets, that also means the more exposure, right? Yeah. And when we have exposure to other people, other situations, other cultures, that's when we have the chance to expand our belief system, our broaden our horizons, and be able to see, hey, wait, there's more to the world than just my world, than just my bubble. And for a lot of people, they don't have that exposure. And I don't want to fault them for that, because some people can't help it. You grew up in a small town in Tennessee or Iowa, and there weren't Asian people there, or Hispanic people, or Jewish people. You're only gonna your perception is only gonna be what you've been taught, or maybe seen on TV and the movies. So the idea isn't to shame anyone or guilt them for not understanding, but to relay the message that, hey, listen, there is another world out there,
Mm-hmm.
and just please be open, have an open mind. Don't lump everybody into the same category,
Yes.
because do you want to be put in the same category?
And yeah, that is really a very good point, because it doesn't feel good. You know, a lot of sudden people say, well, James, you're this. I'm like, well, no, I'm not really that. But if they assume that, then there's no place for me to even be creative, to be myself, to laugh, to joke, whatever it may be. It's just now I'm simply this category, this archetype of some sort. When it
Right.
comes to a lot of the protests right now, in your own experience, because once again, we're just two people talking, we're not the representatives of all people. But
No.
for you, as you see all this, I don't even know how to say this. When it comes to all the protesting, it's a beautiful thing, and then people go beyond that, and some people are looting or rioting. How do people find a balance for that? Because it's such a visceral topic,
Right.
and then the
Right.
expression of that for some people, it may be different than others. How do people reconcile that?
Listen, I understand the anger and the
Mm-hmm.
frustration. For me, right? I
Sure.
can't imagine being a black man who has had a gun held to him by a police officer, who may have that rage and that fear and that anger built up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly not condoning any behavior
Of course.
that robs a community
Mm-hmm.
of property or people of their lives.
Yeah.
You
Their
know,
livelihood, yeah.
so but what we have to do is figure out a way for people to channel that. Because you can't expect someone to be abused
Mm-hmm.
for so long, and then tell them, oh well, you just have to sit quietly over there and think about it and meditate on it.
Yeah.
That's not
Mm-hmm.
that's just not realistic,
It's too far.
right?
It's too late for that. Yeah. In a
Right,
lot of
but
ways.
it's also not okay to
Mm-hmm.
have the looting and the violence. And let's be honest, there are two different groups of people here. There are peaceful protesters,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people who I believe have very nefarious
Sure.
intentions to cause more strife, to
Mm-hmm.
cause more division,
Division.
to make this look like, I mean, pitting it as an all-out race war, which is frightening as
It
hell
is. Yeah, it
and
really is.
absurd. Because the reality is, I believe in my heart there are more good people than there are not,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people who do not want to hate other people, or feel like there is this just direct opposition to someone because they're a different color. I lecture at Stanford once a year, and I got to actually go and be part of this incredible program where I was a luminary and a
Oh,
visiting
wow.
expert, and there were these just phenomenal, almost like mini TED Talks, if you will.
Oh, wow.
And there was a gentleman there who is a scientist, and he was a biologist, and he was talking about things like CRISPR and genes, and so I stayed just to ask him, know all the knowledge you have, right? Based on the human body and our chromosomes and our DNA
Mm-hmm.
and all that. I go, how different are we as people, like based on where we are geographically, based on our ethnicity? And he's like, Karith, people are 99.999999986% the same. You know what I mean? Like, we just have different packages. We just come in different wrappings.
Wow.
Maybe different hair textures and eye colors, but we are pretty much the same. So to have this animosity on something that is so minute because we've been taught that it's major,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we have to start relearning and reshaping how we see each other, but also how we talk to one another. And I know that was a big part of what you want to talk about today.
Yeah.
Was how do we communicate? How do we connect with each other when it's uncomfortable, when we don't know what to say,
Mm-hmm.
when we're exhausted because we've been saying it over and over again, and it seems like nobody's listened until now. How do we do that? And I think the first step is to just be authentically you.
Mm-hmm.
Just come to the table saying,
Yeah.
listen, I don't have the answers. I don't even know what to say. But please know that I want to be part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And help me be part of the solution. Help me help you.
One
You
thing,
know?
I agree with you. I was one of the major news networks called me to talk to me about some of this as well. And one thing I think is so important is we should do this all the time, but specifically if you're going to protest or you're going to be part of this amazing movement, is you always want to ask yourself before you walk out the door, what is my personal integrity? Who am I at my core? So before I engage in anything, I want to ask myself, well, what are the parameters? In other words, who am I and who am I not? Am I this?
Right.
Am I that? So to really have that understanding of who you are and how your integrity is presented in your behavior allows for you to truly show up in a very authentic way. But if you don't really think that through, and then all of a sudden peer pressure or somebody says something and you find yourself getting riled up in something, and rightly so, and I get that, but you want to make sure that you always make sure that your presentation and your behavior is congruent or equal to your personal integrity. Because in that, as we do that as a person and the next person does that, then that's where you start to see more people truly understanding this, because it's an authentic aspect of it, as opposed to, like you said, it's just a fad, or someone gets lost in the mob mentality, and all of a sudden what is such a powerful movement then becomes tainted, or people focus on, let's say, the violence of something and not what the actual depth of this movement truly is.
Absolutely. I was looking at my book because you just made me think of a quote that I used from Mos Def,
Mm.
the
Yeah,
spoken
yeah,
word artist and rapper, and he says, my presence speaks volumes before I say a word.
yeah, I love that.
And sometimes that's all you need, is to just be present,
Mm-hmm.
right? Be present and show up. Even if you're not sure what to do, people will let you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
When you're
exactly.
kind of looking around clueless, people will be like, hey, I need you over here.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what we need right now. We need everybody to show up. Everybody. Because this is not a black thing. This is not a white thing. This is an American thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a people
It's a
thing. This is
human
a
thing. Yes,
humanity thing.
yes.
Exactly. And listen, we're not perfect. We are not
Mm-hmm.
perfect people. There's no such thing as perfect. We're fallible. We're going to say the wrong things. We're going to interpret
Yeah,
things
we certainly will.
the
Mm-hmm.
wrong way sometimes. So we just have to have a consciousness about us, to
Yeah.
what I call it carry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conscious empathy, active listening, responsible reactions, and environmental awareness.
Love that.
Taking it all in.
Some of the, when I was out earlier today and I saw all different types of people, and it's interesting because at least my perception rather, when I interact with other people, just simply to say hello, someone that may look different than me or maybe perceived different than me, all of a sudden you can tell they're a little trepidatious to say, should I say something back? But simply if you just smile at them, I mean, regardless of who they are, the smile itself and just the acknowledgement of someone, regardless, like once again, it doesn't matter who they are, just the simple common decency to just look someone in the eye and say hello or smile at
Yeah,
them. It's
yeah,
such a
yeah.
beautiful free gift that immediately dispels so much tension when you're just going throughout your day. So I mean, I think that's a free gift that we can all give each other during this time.
Absolutely. And you get benefits too. Because,
Yeah.
there's some ratio to how many muscles we use smiling
Uh-huh.
versus frowning. And it almost like tricks the brain into
Yeah.
being in a good mood. And it does. It lowers people's defenses.
Mhm.
It's an invitation to, to say, hey, I'm cool. I'm cool with you. We're cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to really talk about, I know so many people hear about this when it comes to white privilege. I've overheard a lot of people who are not a person of people of color who say, what is this white privilege? I don't have that. I don't have this. It's, I know for me, so I'm half Latin. You wouldn't know it with a name like James Miller, but I am. And so when I was a boy, when I was going through puberty, I had this huge afro, this mustache, and I looked different than I look today. And so the older I became, the more I look as I look today. And so I found that when I was younger, people treated me different. And the older I became, all of a sudden, people started talking to me more, and I would be first in line. I mean, all these things just happened. And it was and I didn't get it.
Right.
I just didn't understand. I'm like, why are people, because it was literally when I graduated college, all of a sudden I just looked different.
Right.
And I didn't understand. I'm like, why are people talking to me? It just was so odd for me. And then now, as the older I become, I realize that that's what it is. And so for you, as you go through your life, can you maybe explain what the difference is between just privilege in general?
Sure. Well, I'm so glad you brought this up. But it also made me think of, when people are heavy, right? And people treat them a certain way, and then they lose weight, and then they get treated totally different.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That you can change. I can't change being brown. But I do things with my hair where people treat me differently, I'm sure, when I would have dreadlocks in, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because that goes that cultural affectation. Yeah.
Exactly.
The perceived cultural affectation.
I love that you brought up the word privilege. I kind of have an issue with that word. And this is why. Because of the misconception of the terminology of white privilege. I think a lot of people hear white privilege and they think, oh, well, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. What are they talking about?
Yeah,
I mean, and let's face it, there are more white people on food stamps and on Medicare and all that other stuff than anybody else in America.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about that, right? But those are the people who are like, why is, they don't understand affirmative action because they think it's against them. Not understanding that the privilege is in there. If they had the opportunity or the education, they would have the doors open probably a little bit faster because they may not have a quote unquote ethnic name. You know what I mean? They would be accepted more readily. And it's got into really interesting. So my husband is Australian. And not Aboriginal. He's like white Australian. And we got into this conversation, and I wish we could change the word privilege to like say advantage, right? I realize it's semantics.
I like that.
But here's the thing, we were in a situation where it was an environment that ended up being rather a racial. There was a lot of racial tension for me as a Black woman in this part of New York that I thought was. I'm not used to it. I don't go into situations thinking I'm going to be treated differently because I'm Black or because I'm a woman.
Sure.
Those are my bonuses as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
I'm Karith. I'm a human being first. But, I said something to him about it. I go, listen, this is so weird, but I think where we are is kind of racist. And he goes, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. I'm like, what do you mean you forgot to tell me? Like, you forgot to tell your Black wife who is here with your half-Black children that people here may not be like as open and kind. I go, dude, that's white privilege right there. The fact that it doesn't even have to cross your mind of how you might be treated based on where you are. I go, and it got, listen, we had a knockdown drag.
I bet you did. I can see where
because
going.
And I get it because he's like, why are you accusing me? He goes, it's not my fault. I didn't ask to be, and I get that. Like, I get it. Like, nobody asked to be born in the skin they're in.
Sure.
And it's nobody's fault. But you have to understand just based on how society is. And I explained to him, like, sweetheart, you are 6'4", okay? You are gorgeous. You got blue eyes and you have a penis. You won the Charlie in the Chocolate Factory golden ticket in the lottery of life, okay? You're going to be treated differently when you walk into a car dealership than I am, or than your mother would be, right? I'm going to be treated differently than somebody who speaks English as a second language, or an elderly person, or, someone who's disabled. So I have to be an advocate for them because I have that advantage. And let's face it, we all have privilege of some sort.
Sure, yeah.
If you have clean water, you got privilege. If you can read, you have privilege. If you have a roof over your head and a checking account, like that's privilege as well.
Yeah, certainly.
But there are different levels of privilege, okay? And what we have to understand is that we may not be able to change the way other people perceive us or the way even society operates. But just having that understanding and knowing that because of that, things aren't going to always be fair or equal. Yeah. You just need to step up and be an advocate for others who don't have the same advantage.
I really like that you changed even though it may sound like you said semantics, but you're using the word advantage because I think that does resonate with a lot more people. But yeah, like you said, the bigger picture, everyone does have some sort of privilege. And you look at someone who may be in a different country who doesn't have some of the advantages that we have. But going back to that aspect of advantage, and I think that really would resonate more with people. I've noticed, like I said, the older I've become, even when I'm walking, if I see a couple that's walking towards me that may be of a different background than me, I see them defer to me as I go to walk. It's something so simple subtle as that. That's a better word to say. So subtle. And because of how I grew up, I mean, I guess I'm more aware of that. So for me, it just boils down to recognizing that, and I stop and I say, "Please go." And obviously, I'm not talking about me as a person, but it's just something as simple as that. And you see their face light up. I'm like, "Thank you."
Right.
And it's just something I think if we're all just aware of that, like where am I in this world? Really being mindful of the people around you and how do they defer to you? Do they not defer to you? And that's just something where it comes to real social. I guess even thinking from a social psychology standpoint, the person who is most dominant in any group will always be the one to determine what happens. And so with that dominance,
and that's why racism is such a power. Yes. It's a power thing.
Yeah, it really is. Yes.
It's a power thing because if you are part of the majority or dominant group, then you are able to, you the whole that scenario in Central Park that happened before the George Floyd murder with Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper. I mean, oh my God, that set me on fire. I was so mad because she weaponized his blackness because she knew she was in a position of power as a white woman. That's where it's wrong. Like she knew there's no, oh, it was an accident. Oh, she was just,
Well, she even looked
no,
at him and said that. Yeah, I'm going to
absolutely
do
knew.
this. And then she
Oh
went on
yeah,
the phone.
and then she did it. And
Yeah.
then she did it. I have no sympathy for the ramifications that and I am
That's her consequences.
probably one of the most sympathetic people there is. But, I think,
It's
like you said, just kind of understand it was. And if the cops had shown up and shot him, that would have been almost premeditated murder.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. It was a really horrible, awful thing to do. And I think when people, again, saw that for the first time, they're like, oh, wow, wait, this really does happen? Oh, that's racism. You know what I mean? Because there's also different levels of racism. And I think most people who have good hearts, who have, good intentions, who have, a variety of friends, even if it's just one black friend, they probably don't think they're racist.
Yeah.
But they have to realize that there's racism on different levels that exist. And it is about the power of just who you happen to be sometimes.
Yes.
Is it fair? No, of course not. Did you ask for it? No, of course not. And we're not asking you to feel bad or apologize for it. I don't want anybody's apology. I just want you to acknowledge that the way we are set up in society, it's not always going to be fair or equal.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think as we wrap up here, I guess just going back to anytime we're around people, just being conscious of what are the subtleties of the interaction. And I think as more people are just aware of that and their eyes are open of, oh, this person looked at me differently, or this person, once again, deferred to me when I walked past, or this person won't make eye contact with me. I mean, there's just, when we have that awareness and that subtlety of it, all of a sudden it creates, once again, that awakening. When that awakening happens, then we're like, oh, well, let me try something different. Let them go first, or let me just say hello to them. And that's where change happens. But if we're not aware that there possibly could be a change, or what we show up with, or how we interact with the people around us, and unfortunately, the movement that's being created is going to fade away.
This isn't about raising our IQs right now. This is about raising our EQs.
Yeah, our emotional questions. Yeah, and that's a wonderful point. And so I hope, as everyone hears this today, we're all in this together. Obviously, this is a human situation. It's a human rights. It's a civil rights. We're all the same. And I love, as the takeaway here, I love the fact that you talked to that scientist who said how similar we are. I think that's just such a beautiful takeaway.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, Karith Foster, it has been an absolute pleasure having you be on my show. I truly appreciate all your wisdom. You're always welcome back anytime you want to come back.
Oh, I adore you. Can I do a shameless plug?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so this is my book.
Oh.
It's called You Can Be Perfect or You Can Be Happy. And here's the deal. Happy people don't hate, right? Happy people understand their value and their worth. And because of that, they can see it in someone else. So while you will get tidbits on, how to let perfection go so that you can find your joy and your peace and your acceptance, it's also about being able to be okay with others.
Yes. Perfect. So my listeners, if you aren't able to find that book another place, simply go to jamesmillerlifeology.com, and in the show notes there, I will link you directly with Amazon to purchase Karith's amazing book. Karith, have a fantastic day.
Thank you.